Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. I love interacting with people who listen to the show. I try to take some time. If you've messaged me, you probably have gotten a reply from me. If you haven't, it's like you probably will. But nothing makes me smile harder than when news happens like it does yesterday and I get a ton of messages going, what are your thoughts on the Jays signing Dylan Cease? I will do 2 hours of Dylan Cease talk today. I probably won't start to do a private message with you about the show. You got to wait. Ben Ennis is here. He will be doing the Dylan Cease talk.
I get to hear it firsthand.
I did a little on Leafs talk last night. I felt bad. I tried to tease it. I tried.
Can't help.
Well, Born read somebody in the chat who asked about Dylan Cease thoughts, and he asked it, and I tried to tease it and go like, "You can listen tomorrow on my show," but then that felt so douchey that I went, "All right, yes, I'll just do a little bit." So yeah, Dylan Cease signs 7 years, $210 million. According to Mitch Bannon of The Athletic, Ken Rosenthal broke that there were deferrals, but he broke that the deferrals make it about $26 million a year, which is still the most money that the Blue Jays have ever doled out to a pitcher. And I'll just say this. I'm extremely excited by this signing. Dylan Cease was always the number one choice for me. And the reasons why are I like the stuff more than Framber Valdez. And he's younger than Framber Valdez. This is a pitching staff that has gotten the best out of a lot of different arms. And I saw, I can't remember who it was, but someone basically equated him to like, hey, remember what the Jays did with Robbie Ray?
That was me.
That was you.
I literally, so on Twitter yesterday, there's an apples to apples comparison, other than they throw with the opposite hand.
And also that Robbie Ray had not had that.
He had a top 7 Cy Young award.
Yes, but
season.
he had not been as consistently good as Dylan Cease.
But this is not the first time Dylan Cease has had an ERA over 4, though, either.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Nope.
And I think that's why, like, when we're doing this and we're going to do, like, kind of the complete picture of it, the reason why I liked it so much is when you looked at what he does outside of the ERA, there was way more reason to be optimistic about his top-end potential. Like, for me, with this rotation, you want a couple of different things, right? You want reliability, guys who throw innings. That's what the Jays covet. That's what they go after. That's
smart thing to covet, too.
Totally smart thing to covet.
Yeah.
Very smart thing to covet is guys who post, and this guy does that. You're getting 32 starts because he's done that each of his last 5 seasons.
He is actually Jose Barrios as far as the Iron Man stuff. I think like technically he missed a start, but they just didn't have him finish the season when he was with the White Sox. But he's been healthy ever since he had Tommy John surgery before he was drafted, actually. Yeah. Which had him go from a first-round pick to, I think, a 6th. But since he's been a professional baseball pitcher,
which is such a crazy way of looking at it now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah. Right? Like, I mean, going back to what? Well, Jeff Hoffman, when he was drafted by the Blue Jays, same thing. Didn't they draft him after he'd had Tommy John surgery as well? He was the first-round pick.
Anyway, the things that I like about this is the guy, he's going to throw 200 strikeouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all he does.
He strikes people out to a degree that is unbelievably rare in baseball. Mm-hmm. There are only 4 other active pitchers who have had 5 straight seasons with 200 Ks. Do you know who they are? Do you want to guess?
5 straight seasons?
5 straight seasons with 200 Ks. There are 4 active pitchers outside of Dylan Cease, who is one of them. There are 4 others.
Okay, so Skubal hasn't been around for 5 years.
Correct. I'll give you a clue. Think older. It's old. It's old because you got to have 5 years.
But you also had to do it this year, and Justin Verlander didn't do it this year.
No, but it's not active in terms of they're on the active streak. They've done it in their career.
Oh,
active pitchers who have done it.
Okay, Verlander, Scherzer.
Yeah.
Kershaw.
Yeah.
And there's one more.
Yeah. It's one of the most fun times we ever had on air because he had the most funny best friend that has ever existed in the history.
Oh, it's Chris Sale.
Yes. Who famously, when they took Adam LaRoche's son out of the the clubhouse, he told the White Sox that they removed his best friend.
That was before the freak out of cutting up the uniforms.
Yeah, but it was in the same year.
Yeah,
He had a year.
that was the beginning
Yeah,
of the off the complete deep end for Chris Sale.
The White Sox said we can't have a 13-year-old hang out in our clubhouse all the time. Chris Sale melted down, and then a few weeks later started cutting up jerseys with scissors. Yeah.
My favorite thing about the Cease thing is,
Yeah.
I think this is correct, and it sounds correct, but if Dylan Cease had just been a Blue Jay over the last 5 years, he'd be already top 10 in franchise in strikeouts.
Yeah, that's a great stat.
Dude, 5 years, he'd be top 10 in the history of this franchise that has won 2 World Series, has been around for almost 50 years. He would be top 10 in the franchise's history in all-time strikeouts.
Okay, so to get back to what I love about this, one of my big thoughts heading into this offseason, and something that I've explored with you a few different times since the Jays lost the World Series, was, hey, don't just take the money and be a spender. Because there was a discussion of, are they going to go outside their valuations, or are they going to just be more emboldened by the fact that what they did got them here, and that they should follow that formula. And outside of Gausman, they sort of jumped the market on. They did go out and say, yep, we want Kevin Gausman. We are going to pay him. We're going to pay him early, and we're going to give him a pretty massive contract. Other times, like when people point to Hyun-Jin Ryu, for example, Hyun-Jin Ryu was at the very end of free agency. He had been lingering. He was kind of sitting around. Nobody was paying him. And then the Blue Jays decided to go and get him because at the time, their rotation was comprised of Tanner Roark, Matt Shoemaker, and I can't even remember some of the other guys that were part of that rotation. I want to say like Anthony Kay was in the mix during that time.
Tony Buckets.
Yeah, it was not good. Oh, it was who was the Japanese pitcher?
Oh, Tomoga?
Yeah, no. No, come on. Anyway,
what, Kikuchi?
No. They had another guy.
Wait, we're talking about 2020?
Yeah, and turned into a reliever in 2021, and actually kind of had a moment where we were like, oh, maybe he is a reliever. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's just move on. Let's just move on.
Was not prepared for this line of
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to get bogged down in this. This is actually live, and people listen to this.
This isn't us just shooting
It's not just us on the phone where we can sit there and then come back to it and start talking about a million other things. The Jays jumped the market, and clearly they overpaid a little. I think that the degree in which they overpaid is up for debate because a lot of different models, smart models, had this guy coming in around that money. And if you make it the deferrals, which is $26 million a year, then, yeah, man, this is kind of actually below a lot of what the models projected. The Jays got a guy to defer money to come pitch for them. They jumped the market, and they went out and got their guy.
Yes.
They didn't.
They're obsessed with him.
So many off seasons, the Blue Jays do this thing where they go, well, we've got our valuation, and we're going to sit around, and we're going to watch. And I get the sense that that's sort of the way that it is with Kyle Tucker, right? Is we're not going to jump the market for Kyle Tucker. But if the price doesn't get up to where we think it's going to be, we'll pounce then. And maybe it ends up happening. They're in the mix for that guy. I'm not saying they can't get Kyle Tucker. What I love about this one is they identified a player. They looked at the stuff. They looked at the track record. And they said, this is someone that we want to bank at least the next 5 years on. This is 5 years of Dylan Cease that we want to go out and get. We want to put him with Pete Walker. We want to put him with the pitchers that we have on our staff. We think that this is going to work to the highest degree. And that's what the big boys do. That is such a different feeling moment for me as a Blue Jays fan, watching them just go out and go, yeah, everybody's going to wait. Everybody's going to see what the prices are. Dylan Cease, before American Thanksgiving.
What do we have to do to get you to shut up about any other offers that you got?
Bingo.
Yeah.
And they did it. And they got their guy, and I think he is the guy with the highest upside, and certainly over the next 5 years.
Yeah. And they have proof of concept here because going back to the Robbie Ray comparison, another fastball slider guy who couldn't find the zone, right? Robbie Ray had less proof of concept here. He had the one good season where he was, I think, top 10 in Cy Young award voting, but otherwise like mid-rotation guy throughout the entirety of his career. But nobody had more walks in baseball between 2016 and 2019 than Robbie Ray. And all the Blue Jays did was just like turn that into 2 walks per 9 and a Cy Young award for Robbie Ray, doing whatever they did, whatever Pete Walker told them to do, which was just like apparently throw strikes. But yeah, the sequencing, whatever it was.
More.
Yeah. And he
wear tighter pants.
Yeah. And yeah, injuries have derailed his career in Seattle since. But man, yeah, they hard to say they didn't get the best out of Robbie freaking Ray. So yeah, while nobody in baseball has more strikeouts than Dylan Cease since he's become a full-time starter, nobody has more walks. And also it's partly like those are counting stats. Like also nobody's made more starts than him, right? Like obviously because he posts
Yeah.
all the time. But yeah, walks have been an issue
He's
for
got
him.
10% walk rate, which is too high.
Yep. He's also got like 35% strikeout rate.
Yeah, he does. But the gambit here is certainly not to be paying for a guy with a 4.5 ERA.
No.
You're not giving 4.5 ERA $30 million a season money. That's not what this is.
And that's not like it's an outlier-ish. It's his worst season by WAR, but he's had an ERA in the fours. Like he's kind of alternated seasons the last three.
He's only actually had the one season where he had the ERA under 3.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One season where he finished second in Cy Young Award voting as a White Sox.
Right. Where he became one of the most coveted pitchers in all of baseball, and everyone was looking at him like, hey, this is – if you recall that time when he was available via trade, there was a lot of discussion like this is the number one guy available on the trade market. It obviously wasn't to the level of what the Skubal conversation is right now, where you're going out and getting – genuinely the best pitcher in baseball and someone who changes the outlook of your franchise drastically. Yeah. But a tier below that is where Dylan Cease was when the White Sox were shopping him.
Yep. And then the Padres, as is their want, they gave up all their prospects for him. And he has one good season where, again, he finishes top 4 in Cy Young Award voting. But then last year, not good. Like, just if he does that this year, you won't be happy because that was bad. Even with all the strikeouts. Like, that was a bad season. What Dylan Cease did in 2025, not good. But yeah, I will bank on the guy with the raw stuff and has shown way more proof of concept than Robbie Ray ever did, and is going to play for the best defense in baseball as opposed to the 20th best. Like I don't. He doesn't put the ball in play a ton, obviously, right?
Because ground balls were an issue for him last year. Like he didn't get enough of them.
Sure, and strikeout pitchers, generally speaking, are fly ball pitchers, but I don't think it's a nothing that the Padres were 20th in baseball in defense, and yeah, his batting average on balls in play was super high, and that you don't think that's going to be a factor going to, well, by one metric, the best defensive team and all those team gold gloves that we didn't know existed that the Blue Jays have. Like the Blue Jays are, if not the best, one of the best defensive teams in all of baseball. I think
and
that's
when
a
they
major
choose
factor.
to, they can have what is maybe the best defensive outfield in all of baseball.
Yeah, and beyond that, and I know the postseason results haven't been there for Dylan Cease in like a tiny sample, even though this year they were good. He didn't go 4 innings against the Cubs, but he didn't allow a run. He struck out a bunch. But yeah, generally speaking, it hasn't gone well for him as a Padre in the postseason. But he does feel like a prototypical, that's your guy in the postseason to shut down the best hitters in the sport, because you don't want balls in play. Then you want people to strike out. And again, nobody has done that more than Dylan Cease since 2021.
So the only kind of pushback I would have to the excitement and the idea that I totally understand what you're saying. You're not trying to make the case that all of the numbers in the ERA were based off of unlucky fielding.
No, walks too many fellers.
Yeah. The thing that I'm hoping the Blue Jays are looking at, and why I think that this is such a good bet, raw talent-wise, but again, this isn't just raw talent where you're saying, hey, it's Nate Pearson. We're going out and getting a guy
throws hard.
Right.
No, he actually has had good seasons with the stuff.
Correct. But the walks are obviously way too high. And yes, byproduct of being a strikeout pitcher, fly balls, and too many walks, right? Not enough innings during actual outings at times because the pitch count gets so elevated because those strikeout numbers are so high that I bet a lot of first 5 unders. You know that about me. So
yeah,
I watch.
That's one of the things everyone knows about you.
Yeah,
that's
well,
your thing.
This is my show, and I think there are a lot of people who listen routinely and would know that that's a bet that I've given out very many times. So I watch a lot of our market baseball, and I like to bet a lot of times on high caliber pitchers being able to hit the first 5 under, especially in advantageous matchups. So I've watched a lot of Dylan Cease, and because you get it where it's like, hey, it's pitching in Petco, it's a high strikeout guy. Hey, if he's pacing a team that's kind of in a slump, let's roll the dice on him having a first 5 under. And he has had some outings that have really frustrated me because he is a body language guy. He is someone where when he's not having it, when he's not getting those strike calls, the borderliners, he can start to have a little bit of meltdown city. And yeah, there's been a few instances where I've watched this guy and he's starting to lose his control, and all of a sudden he can turn what is a very outable inning into kind of a nightmare fairly quickly. My hope is that the Blue Jays, him being surrounded by a staff full of guys that we kind of forget this. It's like maybe they bring Bassett back. I don't know what that is. I got BNS on later to discuss the fallout of this in terms of whether or not they're done with the pitching or how close to done they are with the pitching. But you put him with Kevin Gossman. You put him with Trey Savage. That's two guys that have incredible splitters. That's been one of the discussions around Dylan Cease for quite some time, which is adding that third pitch. And a lot of guys are trying to add the splitter right now. And what environment would you rather be in to get that pitch in your arsenal than in Toronto with Kevin Gossman?
Yeah.
Where would you rather be than in Toronto with like getting to pick the brain of Shane Bieber and Kevin Gossman and Pete Walker?
Yeah.
And it's a really great environment for this guy. And I think that if you can get him to be a touch less of the when things start to go bad, you compound the mistakes and make it worse.
Yeah.
Potentially adding a third pitch and potentially getting just a few less of those fly balls turning into home runs. Yeah, I think that there's at least a case that this guy could end up being your number one starter by the end of the next season, which is why I liked this signing so much.
Yeah, you have a bunch of bullets in the chamber for guys that could be the best starter on the staff, right?
Yep.
Like, hey, Kevin Gossman has the pedigree.
Yeah,
I'd
as
say.
of right now, there's 4 different guys that you could make the case for would end up starting game 1 of
And the
playoffs.
guy that you're not including in that, which I agree with, but started opening day in this season that the Blue Jays made game 7.
Right, like the idea that he bounces back and has a good year is not outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, so you're talking about one guy who's gotten Cy Young Award votes in Kevin Gossman and been right there, and I believe he has a second place finish. Anyways,
yeah, he does.
Yeah,
but that was the year before he came to Toronto.
Was it with the Giants? Anyways, he's had some great years and been one of the best pitchers in baseball many different seasons throughout the course of his career. Trey Savage had a couple of the most dominant starts we've ever seen in the history of the postseason. And granted, he's going to get his first tour of duty and trying to make as close to 30 starts as possible and adjustments, and maybe someone will figure him out, whatever. But, like, is it out of the realm of possibility that he's one of the best starting pitchers in the American League in 2026? I don't think anybody's saying that. Like, nobody's also banking on it, but it's possible. Absolutely. Shane Bieber has factually won a Cy Young Award. Like, that's happened. And now you got a guy who's finished second and fourth. And, coming off season 4.5. But, like, if he goes back to that, is anyone going to be blown away? And then the other guy who started opening day for you last. It's nothing's a guarantee, and it's sports and it's baseball and it's a roll of the dice. But to have 4 bullets in the chamber and not including the guy who started opening day as like guys that could, at the end of the season, if you said any 4 of those guys won the American League Cy Young Award in 2026, you're not going to be laughed out of the room. To have 4 of those guys is unreal. Combined with, and there's more bats to come, basically the best offense in baseball coming back as was in the World Series, pretty good starting point. You got to work on the bullpen.
Incredible starting point.
Yeah, you got to work on the bullpen because they made it to Game 7 of the World Series with the 10th best ERA of the 12 playoff teams. Yep, but it's like it is now American Thanksgiving. We haven't even gotten to the winter meetings, and you're already at that spot is crazy.
Well, yeah, you're before the winter meetings, and you got Shane Bieber to opt in for $12 million, and you got Dylan Cease to defer money to be a Toronto Blue Jay. And again, we'll get a better understanding of this contract once Framber Valdez signs, because he's his closest comparable on the market, right?
Yep.
But I just don't know how you couldn't be encouraged at all by the fact that he did some deferrals.
Yeah, and Santander, I believe, also took deferrals.
He did, but again, this is the reason why it's different is Santander was more of a byproduct of the Blue Jays of the bygone era, which is they wait. They waited for Santander. His market didn't develop the way that he had hoped after he hit 44 home runs. He was kind of waiting around, and eventually the Blue Jays decided to pounce with the $92 million offer with a bunch of deferrals. And yes, like they deserve credit for paying him, right? Like they went out and spent the money on what is effectively a DH and a subpar outfielder. But they kind of waited, I think, to see what the price would land at. They didn't jump the market and go get the guy. And for Dylan Cease, the difference for me anyways, and maybe BNS will explain that this isn't as big of a deal as it feels to me on the outside.
Yeah.
But to be jumping the market and also getting a guy to defer tells me that he's also bought into what it is that you're doing. And now, if you're the other free agents too, and it's coming down to really tight money between the situations, the stuff that you just outlined in terms of, hey, the best outfield the best batting order in baseball, or one of the hottest last season, a team that a lot of other organizations are looking at and saying, maybe we shouldn't just be hitting for home run power all of the time. Maybe it is a little bit more putting the ball in play and not striking out. A team that has the culture that the Blue Jays have. A team that has the coaching staff that has been getting the best out of guys, like including their hitters, right? A lot's been made of the hitting coach, and I think that that's actually born to be correct. You're looking at a starting pitching staff now that has 4 guys that could legitimately end up as an ace of a baseball team. There's no Tarek Skubal in the mix. There's no Paul Skeens, but there's only a handful of those guys in all of baseball. You look across major leagues and say the Jays are about as deep as anybody. You would take the Jays 5 against anybody's 5.
Well, I mean, the swing and miss stuff for Cease compared to Skubal is comparable.
100%. And all I'm saying is they jumped the market. They went out and spent money. If you are another guy and you were looking at these conversations that you're having with a bunch of these other teams and you're trying to compare where it does feel like you can win, I don't know how you could look at the Jays situation and not go, yeah, man, all things being equal or fairly close in terms of the money, or some of the discomfort I might have had because I'm a West Coast guy and I got to move to the East Coast and move to Canada. Those things dissipate. Those things are now diminished.
Yeah, no, it went from theoretical. This offseason is going to be different, okay? You're not going to feel like the bridesmaid with the Soto and the Otani of it all because, this is different. They actually went to Game 7 of the World Series. You should hear the discourse between the players and the players' wives and the other wives and, just the behind-the-scenes conversation about how great it is to be in Toronto. Okay.
The facilities.
And I bought that, but I was like, okay, I would like to see it. And we saw a little bit with the Bieber decision. And even if there's other factors, there's no question he didn't not enjoy his time as a Blue Jay.
Yeah, but even if there's no other factors, it's even if there are other factors at this point, there's enough good reporters out there that somebody would have found a little something. Do I doubt the premise that he didn't want to give teams his medicals? No, I think that's very possible. But do I think that he left money on the table by opting in for $12 million to stay a Toronto Blue Jay? Nothing will shake me from that belief.
No. But now we have a real thing that happened here where, okay, I guess maybe Framber Valdez or Ranger Suarez could be, it's the eye of the beholder. Somebody else views them as the best free agent starting pitcher available. But I, like you, thought Cease was the guy.
Yeah, Cease was the first name that I mentioned when I talked about my dream offseason.
Yeah, Cease was the guy to me as well, despite what was a bad year. He had a bad year in 2025. Not good. 4.5 ERA. I don't care how many people you're striking out. That's not good.
Yeah, but we watch these playoffs, right? And what do you want to have is guys who can get themselves out of jams with the strikeout.
Yep. No, that they went out and told Scott Boras, who is Mr. Give me all the offers. And I don't care unless you're Steven Strasburg, and I know your elbow's about to explode. We go to market and we take all offers and we wait until the last possible second, even if that's going into February in spring training. You told Scott Boras, and the guy who, feels comfortable in his medicals because he's never missed a start. Here's what we need to pay to get you to forego everything else. And that's the starting point for everything. Yeah, it's more than proof of concept. It is the thing. It's happening now. It is actually happening now. Blue Jays giving a 7-year, $210 million deal to a pitcher, too. It's all happening.
So here's take number 2 off of this deal.
Is it positive?
Yes. Well, yeah. It's. I would say it's neither. This is an incredible signing from the standpoint of you flexed your financial might. You did something that you've never done before in terms of this amount of money on a starting pitcher. You jumped the market. You went to Scott Boras, like you just said. You put down on a piece of paper, name your price. He slid it back across the table to you. Maybe you slid it back with some of the deferrals, but you got it done. It's late November, and your pitching staff is set. Yes, could there be a Barrios trade? In my opinion, I think that they should continue to explore that. But if they enter the season and now Eric Lauer is their 6th starting pitcher based on the year that he just had, you're feeling like you're in a pretty comfortable place, especially knowing that they're very likely to add yet another guy who can step in and give them starts. Like, I don't think that they're done completely in terms of those kinds of swingman type of arms, just because of the Savage piece that we've talked
Yeah.
about. Like, and I don't know what Bowden Francis is going to be anymore, but yeah, and I certainly am not banking at all on Ricky Tiedemann. I'm sorry.
Hey, Adam Macko exists with his
Whatever.
5 ERA in the International League.
My point is, I think that they are going to strengthen the depth behind those guys, even if they don't move Barrios. But as of today, if you went into the season with those 5 guys plus Eric Lauer, that should make you feel stupendous.
Yeah.
Especially considering that, again, it is still November. We have not had the winter meetings yet. The take is there's a case to be made that you were willing to overpay to a certain degree or jump the market for a starting pitcher. And BNS, who's on later, was all over this because you have a lot of starting pitching money coming off the books. And so there was an added priority to make sure that this was not just about this season and capitalizing on the moment, but it was about making sure that the following year, now you have Dylan Cease to pair with Trey Savage because 2 of these guys are coming off the books and Kevin Gossman and Shane Bieber. So in terms of being like a little bit more, if you want to frame it as reckless with the spending, this made more sense all along. This was more feasible that they would go out and they would overdo what was their, what were we calling it?
What their perceived value?
Yes, exactly. Their valuations.
Yeah.
That's it. Their valuations. They were more comfortable going outside of that for a starting pitcher because of the cost certainty moving forward with this team and the absolute need to shore up starting pitching moving forward. Like, you could end up in a scenario next year where, hey, maybe Shane Bieber isn't the guy anymore, and maybe Gossman is too old, and you've got to go out in free agency or the trade market and find multiple other spots in your rotation to help you fill out what is another contender. So you got some of the work done early. For me, the take is this can't be the only area you're working like this in. You've still got to land one of Bo Bichette and Kyle Tucker.
Yeah.
And this actually makes it more of an imperative for you to land one of those 2 guys.
Yeah, I don't know how it makes it more, but I think it
Makes it more to me because it feels like you have a even greater. Okay, so we do the Scherzer stuff, right? Like, I would have loved Max Scherzer to return for the vibes.
Yeah.
But if we're just looking at it, not fully hindsight, when Max Scherzer came in to pitch playoff games for the Jays, when he went and faced Seattle, and even the outings that he had against the Los Angeles Dodgers, the thought of the fan base,
Ohtani in Game 7.
yes, but the thought amongst the fan base was just don't kill him, right? Leading up to that, there were a ton of starts where he was just getting eviscerated in the first inning of ball games, and it made it to the point where people thought it was very plausible that he did not pitch at all in the postseason, and they kind of needed him to. Now you're in a spot where you're way more concrete in terms of the confidence that you would have in a postseason series, barring injuries, if these 4 guys just perform up to what is their essentially norms across their careers. So the reason why it feels even more important to go out and get one of those bats is that now you're kind of seeing like the stuff that you talked about and go, man, they're right there. They're right there with anybody. You got to have another special bat in the middle of the lineup that basically buffers you from some of the negative regression you could see with some of the hitters, some of the step back that you could see with potentially George Springer's age and how special that season was, or the idea that Anthony Santander never works for you in this market, which is possible.
Yeah, I think they are going to be very much in the market for those 2 guys, but I also do think, like, you are starting at a much better starting place with the offense than you ever were with the pitching and even the bullpen. And if I was going to prioritize the things, like, if you could only do one thing, and I think you can do multiple things. In fact, I think they have been doing multiple things this whole time, right? It's just Dylan Cease has materialized first, but I think they've had a conversation or 2 with Bo Bichette's representatives and Kyle Tucker's representatives and maybe a bunch of relievers representatives. But, like, if I could prioritize a thing, because the Blue Jays are coming off a season in which they were one of the best offenses in baseball and maybe the best offense in baseball if you just cut off April and May, like from June on, they were the best. And then, Bo Bichette had huge home run in Game 7, and he was great in the World Series, but they got there and scored 1 million runs against a bunch of great pitchers without him, and that you could see a scenario where it's not one of those guys. I'm not saying don't take this, Ross, as a get out of jail free card to avoid the Bo Bichette, Kyle Tucker markets. No, that's not what I'm saying.
I don't think he is. I don't think anyone would think about it that way. Actually, I shouldn't say anybody, because one of the popular replies I got to my enthusiasm about the Cease signing on Twitter was a lot of people going, "Oh, great, now they're out on Bo and now they're out on Kyle Tucker," and I think that's asinine. That's not the case.
No. And I think if that were the case, that they would adjust their thinking, but that it shouldn't be the case. I don't think it is the case. Especially when, like
no, it's just that this was the priority.
Yeah.
Making sure that you got the starting pitcher you wanted was more important than making sure that you added a high leverage bat. It was. And again, like BNS on later on the show today had been saying this all along, had been texting me about it, had been on the show talking to me about it. I talked to multiple people like Robert Murray and Jim Bowden. They all said the same thing. They're prioritizing starting pitching right now. They want to go out and get a starting pitcher. The fact that they have shored this up this early in the offseason should only be viewed as encouraging in terms of them knowing exactly what they have to play with, evaluating the rest of the market as it moves forward while everybody's still on the table.
Yeah, everybody is still on the table. And the money's the biggest thing, right? Like even for Dylan Cease, clearly, like money was important.
Yeah, he didn't come here for cheap. The deferral thing, though, is encouraging to me.
Yeah. And it's maybe an overpay, but like a slight one. Nobody looks at that as like, oh my God, they gave him $500 million. No. Like, okay, it's cost of doing business. A guy who's just turning 30 years old, who's struck out the most batters in baseball since he became a starter.
Yeah, I have not seen one baseball account that has gone with like, this is going to be one of the worst contracts.
I've seen people criticize it.
For sure.
And yeah, Padres fans are like, did you watch him pitch at all last year? Because it was bad last year. He had some great starts, no question. A lot of not just clunkers, like unpassably bad.
I think 10 of his starts, he didn't go beyond like 4 innings.
Yeah, it's really bad. Also, we haven't talked about the Alejandro Kirk of it all, too, and the amount of strikes that he may steal. And I don't know what to do with the ABS thing existing as well, but yeah.
Well, but sure, the ABS thing existing is always, it can work both ways.
Yeah.
Like your pitcher could end up hitting that where they were going to give him a walk.
Yeah.
So I view it as a wash. And it's not like ABS is there for every single pitch. It's strategic that you have to use for the right hitter at the right plate in the right moment. So when you're talking about stealing strikes, I don't think that there's going to be a massive diminishing effect to the value of a Kirk behind the dish.
If I had to guess, too, I would say that the starters are least affected by it because you only get 2 a game.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like
you're going to use them during the later innings.
Totally.
Yeah, it's going to become like basketball where in the NBA, unless it's your star player and it's early and it's a crazy obvious miscall, you're going to save it. How many times do you watch an NBA game and there's something that happened? Like last night it happened with the Raptors.
Yeah.
Pirtle goes up for an offensive rebound, and Brandon Ingram's doing like this little bit of a hug move to the Pacers center Huff.
Yeah.
And Jack's talking about, like, should they use their challenge now? There's 3 minutes left in the game. You're like, right. Of course they still have that because you're an ass if you use it earlier.
Yeah, totally. So I don't think.
Could you imagine being like some 9 hitter and you're like, in the third inning of a baseball game?
That's going to be so interesting to see who has the leeway to do that.
Well, I think that what is going to be funny is every once in a while there's going to be a dude who just spazzes and he can't help himself because he's so mad and he taps it. Yeah. And then you're going to get the look of the manager.
That's what makes it so different than the NBA challenge. It's because, like, you can do this.
Yeah,
you can do
but they don't do it. But it's like, as soon as you tap that hat,
it's on. You did it.
Yeah.
You get the red challenge flag.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody does.
Yeah, everybody has the challenge flag in their pocket.
Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting factor. But back to the conversation we were having before we sidetracked there. Yeah, the money is the thing for Bo Bichette and Kyle Tucker, and it should be. I mean, I shouldn't say it should be, but it's not surprising, and it would be for me, too.
No, it should be. Yeah,
it would be for me, too.
Yeah.
The money is the thing. But, like,
if you can get over $20 million a year from someone, then you should take that.
Yeah, but now you got a choice, and it's not like
the money's likely to be comparable between the guys.
Yeah, I think so.
And if you're talking about comparable money, it's hard to ignore the situation that the Blue Jays have in front of them and how, Shapiro and Atkins, we talked about how they played it cool with, hey, everybody's always wanted to come to Toronto.
Yeah.
But now you actually have gotten the PR of a World Series run to showcase to players. Like, there's a consensus amongst a lot of, leagues that the only time that you actually get to be a fan of the sport is during the World Series because still, like, there's 4 teams playing. You're not watching every single game. You're not watching every single night. A lot of teams get watched because it is the World Series by guys throughout the rest of the league. They're like, yeah, it's the World Series. I'm going to put that on.
Yeah.
And so what people watch with the Blue Jays was a hyper exciting team with a insanely fun fan base.
Yeah.
Pushed the Dodgers to 7 games, almost beat them by what was a mistake at third base by IKF.
No.
By Don Mattingly.
Yeah.
By
the coaching staff.
By both. Yeah, by both.
I mean, he was just following orders.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, that's. Um, I just think that they're clearly in a different echelon in terms of perception around baseball. And again, this of them jumping the market, that's what I'm trying to really illustrate here is that this is different now. It was always building this way since COVID, right? The first year coming out of COVID, it was, hey, they're going to get a George Springer or they're going to get a Lindor. Like someone is coming here because they're going to spend money. They got Kevin Gossman, and this kind of gets pushed around by Blue Jays faithful whenever there's like the negative Nancy's on Twitter being like, they'll never get that guy. They do. Well, the Jays have signed big free agents before. Yes, of course they have. They've signed big free agents before. And adding Vladdy was one step in that. Another step of being like, now they pay superstars $500 million contracts.
Yeah.
But this to me is different in terms of like, nope, they jumped the market. They gave somebody $210 million who throws baseballs.
Yeah.
Materially different. And they did it before Thanksgiving. You have to be unbelievably encouraged in terms of where they sit now amongst the major power players in baseball. Just to put it this way, because I'm kind of rambling. Every year when they've gone to the winter meetings and we get the reports from the insiders, right? And they go, the Blue Jays are in the mix.
Yeah.
What's been the prevailing thought from Blue Jays?
Oh, they're always in the mix.
Right.
It's always Scott Boras using the Blue Jays.
They're being used. They're always the bridesmaid.
Yeah.
My feeling is that perception is changing.
Yeah, they're a big boy.
Yes, that's it.
And they were a big boy before with the 5th highest payroll and, the free agents. And I don't know. This is different stuff.
That's what I'm saying. That's where I'm going with this.
This is different stuff. Going out and getting arguably the top pitching free agent available, giving him a ton of money, and then still being in the market for the top position players. They I haven't seen the odds recently, but I know they were right there as the favorites to land Kyle Tucker. And if not him, Bo Bichette. And like, what better presentation can you make than like, hey, how do you feel about spending the prime of your career with a team that just made it as close as you can make it to a title? And we just threw more money at it. And a guy who's in the middle of his prime, not to mention the best hitter on this team during the postseason run, it's just like entering his prime. He's going to be here
forever.
He's here for the next decade and a half. So your contract's only going to be like half as long as his. So he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Including
he's going to forget you existed.
Yep. Yeah. You're going to, hey, remember Kyle Tucker when you played with him 10 years ago?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. He'll show up. He'll come back when he's retired and see the end of your career as you're celebrating a Hall of Fame career, maybe in Toronto. And not to mention, everybody's family seems to love it. Like, it was not lost on me, the Kevin Gossman wife thing in the Instagram of the like, it's hard to poke holes in like that negative Nancy person who would say, well, we've been here before with these rumors and it's just, everything's different now.
No.
The old rules do not apply anymore.
This is the application of what everybody dreamed of.
Yeah. Yeah. This is it. You're watching it manifest because it's not just, all right, taking a pretty good regular season team and turning it into that thing I know it's not just like a footnote because the playoffs were so incredible. Blue Jays won 94 games, won the American League East, won the season series against the Yankees, made the Yankees their daddy, and then came back and won the American League Championship Series. And, they've already established themselves doing all that as the 5th highest payroll. How about the 3rd highest payroll and the biggest free agents there are to add to this team?
Yep. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple or on Spotify. You can leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube or, hit the thumbs up button. You can reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. Like I said, I try to read as many replies as possible. Ennis and I, we talk on the phone a lot. And one of our favorite running jokes has been Anthony Rendon for the last 5 years, 6 years?
Since he signed.
Yeah, because it's been hilarious.
And going back to him, remember Ryan Zimmerman during the COVID season? He's
of course.
I play baseball because it's fun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play because it's not going to be fun this year.
Yeah.
Because, professional baseball players want it all. They want all the money and for it to be the funnest thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, for Anthony Rendon, he was never having fun.
No.
He hates baseball.
Yeah.
And there's rumors that the Angels are going to buy him out of the final year of his 7-year, $245 million contract. To me, in my lifetime, it's going to be the contract that I compare every bad signing to. And I'm going to get into what I think were the worst signings in Toronto sports history. That's next. It was Shun Yamaguchi. Thanks to Chris for tweeting that in. The picture that we couldn't remember that was part of that stat.
I'm glad we didn't spend like 20 minutes trying to rack our brains trying to come up with that one. We only spent 2 minutes.
Yeah. It was good. We caught it. That's growth.
Yeah. That we can identify the mistakes we're making in the moment.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. It would have been great if a lot of these organizations could have identified the mistakes they were making in the moment. So, quick backstory on this. Yesterday I called you going, I don't have anything for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Toronto Blue Jays, not just for signing a pitcher that I really wanted and making this team even more competitive and all of the things that we just did in that 40 minutes, but also because, good for the Leafs. They won. I did Leafs talk, okay? It's there. I got all my thoughts about the Leafs game last night. Justin Bourne and I, they're there.
Yeah.
Awesome finish again for Brandon Ingram. Really spectacular. Another just game-winning bucket from a guy that they signed to do that. I can't believe how good that signing is. That trade. And then the signing. But it's been unbelievable. Like, it's exceeded even what I could have thought would be my most optimistic thoughts by...
That Pacers pick is not top 5.
Well, yeah. That is something that people should at least note.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I told you, I'm like, all right, I'm trying to come up with segments, and Anthony Rendon retired. And I went, okay, this is actually something because you and I have joked about this guy forever because you just have to Google Anthony Rendon quotes and you can get a pretty good understanding as to why we've joked about him so many times, which is like, he doesn't really like baseball. And he signed a $245 million contract with the Angels to basically be, after he won, was he World Series MVP?
I think he was
an
not.
Incredible
he was
World Series.
Incredible.
They won a World Series. He became one of the hottest free agents in all of baseball. And the Angels decided to sink a bunch of money into him. And he became infinitely worse than the Albert Pujols signing, which at least had like some moments with the Angels.
He played baseball games.
Yeah, but Rendon didn't really play a lot of baseball games. And then when he was asked about it, he'd always be like, yeah, it's because I don't really want to play. And yeah, he has many, 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 many quotes. If you just Google Anthony Rendon quotes, you will get 2 pages of basically him talking about how he doesn't take baseball all that seriously. And that he likes to compete, but he doesn't like anything that comes with basically having to be a baseball player. One of my favorites was like, yeah, I'd like to be an all-star, but not go if that's possible. So it just, he's very open and upfront. So in honor of Anthony Rendon, I wanted to talk about some of the worst contracts that were ever signed in this city and then come up with what is going to be the very cliche Mount Rushmore and land on the 4. So I want to say 2 quick things first. I think Rendon should replace Bobby Bonilla in terms of the way we view contracts. And I get it that Bonilla is famous because he gets the $1 million every year, basically in perpetuity. But Bonilla was an all-star of the year that he was released. And the thing about that contract is I feel bad for him because he was really good.
Yep.
Like unbelievably good. And he's famous for this one thing. But it was just, the story of that is how stupid the organization was. After this guy was an all-star, they decided to buy him out. He had a $5.9 million lump sum buyout. And instead they deferred the payment for, I think it was 10 years, deciding to give him $1 million a year afterwards for multiple decades. So Bobby Bonilla Day is a fun thing to do, but I like that guy shouldn't be viewed as the way he is by people of our age, I would say, and younger, which is that it's like, oh, it's the worst contract ever because they have to pay him $1 million forever.
Yeah, I think it's like the dumbest contract ever, but yeah.
But it's the dumbest buyout ever.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest buyout ever. That's the way, and I know I'm not going to shape the narrative here. I don't have that power, but I'm just saying from my standpoint, that's it. Also want to shout out the respect for Rick DiPietro because he got 15 years, $67.5 million. But why I respect him and why he doesn't get enough love is that he currently hosts a radio show for ESPN. He does it every day. He wakes up and he goes and he grabs his lunch pail and he grinds talking about the New York Islanders every single day doing this job when he has $67.5 million in the bank that he didn't really have to play for. Okay, so I'm naming this the David Clarkson Mount Rushmore because I'm removing David Clarkson from the mix.
Okay.
because he's just too obvious. And I feel bad for him because he cared about the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was his lifelong dream to
Apparently
do so.
all-time nice guy, too.
Truly. But David Clarkson signed a 7-year contract for $36.5 million. He played 118 games. He had 15 goals.
Yeah.
So for a 7-year, $36.5 million deal, he scored 15 goals. And he had 26 points. And he was a -25.
Yeah, he fell down a lot. It was a lot of falling down during the David Clarkson era, but there was some defense of Phil Kessel and John Scott.
Yeah, it's just
a moment.
That's his most famous moment. His preseason sticking up for a teammate. Anyway, I genuinely do feel bad for the guy because he cared, and there was way too much adulation that went his way. It was
Wendell Clarkson.
Yeah, I actually joked with McKee yesterday because I asked him to look over my list. He's sick right now, and I said to him, I'm like, it's one of the ultimate Simpsons monkey paw things ever. Is you would have told him someday you're going to play for your boyhood team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they're going to sign you to they're going to sign you to generational money, and they're going to compare you to Wendell Clark. He's like. So it's cruel. It's truly cruel. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly run this down because we don't have a ton of time. But here's what I have in terms of the contenders, and then I'll settle in on what I think are the worst ones. Tanner Roark, 2 years. Oh, by the way, I should say, I have it in categories. It's like least return for your buck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Most nonsensical piece of it where it's like, how did you even arrive at this number? And then I have it as, did it have a actual impact on what that franchise was doing?
And this is it players that are just acquired in free agency, or is it
just acquired in free agency? Like they could have been on your team.
Okay.
Like, because I have one guy that's on there, but the one guy that's on there is kind of like not really. How do I say this? Like he was kind of a free agent. Like he played with the team for one season, so I'm kind of like,
Okay.
I counted them. I just counted them because I thought I couldn't leave them off of this list. But yes, most of these guys are, what would I say? Like, yeah, they were free agents that were brought in from another place. Okay, so let me start this list. Well, let me pull it up. I'm getting a weird thing here. I have Tanner Roark, 2 years, $24 million. He pitched 54 and 2/3 innings, and he had a 6.7 ERA.
He was a diesel, though. He was a diesel engine.
Yeah, so my case for him is just like, in terms of least return for your buck, there was not one positive Tanner Roark moment. He just came in and he gave up meatballs, and he was so clearly done. They tried to force the issue with him, and they tried to bring him back the second season, and he did not last very long, and they ended up having to get rid of him. But a guy that was supposed to eat innings over 2 years ended up eating 54 and 2/3, and all he did was give up home runs.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
It was also, man, during the pandemic too. So it was like, I guess it gets lost to history a little bit, that 2020 season. But no, it was, imagine what you got from Max Scherzer in September, every single start for an entire season, where it was like, couldn't get out of the first inning.
No, it was as unwatchable as I've ever seen a player.
Yeah.
And so I had to put him on this list. Like I couldn't, there was just no way that I was going to leave him off. This one, it's a little lower in terms of the AAV, but still has to be worth noted because this one falls into the like least explainable of them all. But it's Jeff Finger, 4 years at $14 million. Jeff Finger's agent at the time thought it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And it is widely believed that people think Cliff Fletcher thought he was Kurt Sauer.
Yep.
And that he signed him by mistake. And that was proven to be correct because Jeff Finger was horrible here and did not perform adequately well. So in terms of like the funniest, I kind of think that one has to be on the Mount Rushmore because like a general manager, that's never going to happen again. Like you're never going to have a general manager ever again who signed someone who it wasn't the guy he thought he was. And he happened to give him $14 million to play no games for you. Heidu Turkoglu, 5 years, $52 million. I have Damari Carroll, 4 years, $58 million. JYD 2.0. He comes in out of the 4 years, 58. He played 2 years in Toronto, only started 94 games. He shot 39% from the floor. He was a 9 point, 1 assist, 4 rebound a game guy. Patrick Marleau. This is a trickier one because he falls very much into the category of how did it impact your franchise, not what did he do on the ice for you. And the other piece of it is very, very, very much up for debate. So 84 points in 2 seasons, fine, right? But he cost you a first to get out of the contract, which resulted in Seth Jarvis. But also the reason why I have this one in here, because normally I would say, yeah, you can't really put that one in, even with the first, is there's definite questions as to whether or not he was the right veteran to put around these young players. And the fact that they all emulated a lot of what his career looked like, it's worth noting on the list. Nikita Zaitsev, 7 years, $31.5 million. That's the guy who played the 1 year with the Leafs. But this one goes into the like most nonsensical, how did you ever arrive at this number for a modern day franchise? He played one season, had 4 goals and 34 points in 82 games. And the Leafs decided to give him 7 years, $31.5 million.
Who are they bidding against?
That's it. It's like he got that deal. It's insane. It's unbelievable that it ended up there. And then the last one that I have for you is the controversial one that I was teasing to you, but it's Anthony Santander. Jays are paying $5 million a year until 2046. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, deferred money, but deferred money will be paid at some point. And so he will be getting the Bobby Bonilla 2046. Hey, it's Anthony Santander, Dave. 565 OPS, negative WAR in his first season, completely blocked right now by George Springer at DH and by multiple better outfielders from the field that performed in the World Series and are loved here. Not a proven upgrade over Barger, not a proven upgrade over Nathan Lucas, takes money off the table and makes the Kyle Tucker decision even more complicated. I would say that, like, he's not really there. This was more for fun, but, like...
Oh, yeah, no, he does that again, and, like, you don't get any meaningful production out of him.
It's more so like how he's blocked in the organization right now, and like what an uncomfortable fit he is already.
Yeah, unless he hits 40 bombs. But yeah, he's not, even when he hits his 40 bombs, he's not a perfect player because he doesn't make contact or walk or play defense, right? So it was a bygone era of a franchise that's like, can someone please hit home runs? Because nobody can do that. And he's like, I can't either.
But then George Springer did it as a DH, and they were like, oh. Oh no. and my Kyle Tucker thing is I think kind of salient in this, which is like we're doing this whole conversation about, hey, should the Jays sign him or not? But you're like, who's going then? Mm-hmm. Because you can't have the team as is.
Yeah, I think Nathan Lucas is obviously fourth outfielder already, right?
Yeah, like, but then Davis Schneider and
he's a bench. Yeah, those guys are bench. But yeah, I think Barger's best fit is as a corner outfielder. Yeah. I agree. And it's kind of why I think Bo Bichette is the best fit. And plus, he's cheaper and younger.
Yeah.
Even though Tucker's a better player.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a good list. Like,
so who are the top 4 for you?
I think the Zaitsev one has to be on there. Yeah. Like, I'm glad you mentioned it because and Hito as well, because there was the other stuff. You don't have Hito on there?
No, it was the other stuff too, but it's like it's 5 years, $52 million for a guy that was like a prime free agent that here's why it wasn't as bad. We have to go. But this is my case for Hito.
Yeah.
He at least changed some of the perception around free agents coming to Toronto, and him coming here was like worth something at that time to the Raptors. I have it as Roark, Carroll. Carroll's so bad. Zaitsev and Jeff Finger. That's my top 4.
Yeah, Finger's a good one. Yeah. Finger has to be
there.
Yeah, hey, here's advice.
Mike Komisarek, honorable mention.
Yeah, I have him on my list too. But yeah, don't let your general manager be 70+ years old. Like, I don't want to be like ageist on this, but like, maybe like 70-year-old cutoff.
I'd at least be like, have someone else going, this guy? Are you sure? That'd be good. Yeah. All right, quick break and then Ben Nicholson Smith. So, yeah, thank you, content gods. Thank you, Toronto Blue Jays. Ben Nicholson Smith, senior Blue Jays reporter and co-host of At the Letters podcast, which you should be subscribed to already. He joins me now to dig deeper into the Dylan C stuff and then also a little bit of the fallout of this. What's up, buddy? How are we doing?
JD, the Jays striking early. I got to admit, I did not see this coming.
Yeah, you know what, though? You did see pitching coming. Like in all of the fog of, are they going to get Kyle Tucker? Are they going to re-sign Bo Bichette? You stood 10 toes down on, they are prioritizing pitching. They are prioritizing pitching. You screamed it from every single rooftop that there was, and you were right. They prioritize pitching.
Yeah, and you know what is funny? Because I just wrote an article that'll go up in a few minutes here. Mm-hmm. And in the article, I kind of outlined the ways that this deal is, on the one hand, like very predictable. It's so on brand for the Blue Jays. You know, they like signing free agents starting pitching. They've been good at it. It's one of the things that's led them to the amount of success that they have had, whether it's Gausman or Chris Bassett, or even going back to Ryu and Kikuchi. Mm-hmm. They sign free agents starting pitching, and they work with Boris, right? He represented Kikuchi and Ryu and Cease. So in some ways, it's like the most predictable thing. And like you said, I was saying I knew they were on pitching. It wasn't exactly a secret that starting pitching was their priority. But then it's also a departure, and we can get to the many ways that it's a departure from where they've been in the past. But it really is a meaningful departure, and it's kind of wild that like earlier this year there was a very, very strong narrative out there that I myself contributed to, and we can get into all the layers of this, that the Jays finished second on free agents. And it was a narrative because it was also a reality. Like it wasn't just something that was invented. And then now, Shane Bieber wants to come back to Toronto. Vlad Jr. wants to stay in Toronto. Dylan Cease wants to come to Toronto. Now probably there's a long line of free agents that want to come to Toronto. So the narrative has really, I think, flipped. I think that we're into a new kind of narrative space when it comes to this team now, and it happened fast.
So my first hour with Ennis, that was the major takeaway that I had about this signing. Is everything that you just outlined and said, I said, but less eloquently. But it is like it's the dream coming to fruition, which is the Blue Jays, by my estimation. I think that the bridesmaid thing was always a little overstated, and that it got blown out of proportion because of the Shohei signing, right? Like that was so traumatic to so many people that all of a sudden it created this lens of every free agent that you miss out on or had missed out on in the past was now part of like an overarching larger problem, which is that like they're in and they're around it, but they don't actually have what it takes to be able to be the team that did exactly what they did today, which is the jump the market team, the set the market team, the group that decides like, hey, we name your price and we will make it happen because you are our guy. And that to me is materially different than like Hyun-Jin Ryu was waiting around on the market, didn't find a landing spot, and then the Jays pounced when that didn't really materialize. Kevin Gossman, I would say, was probably the closest one to this in terms of like player they identified and were most aggressive for. But Shane Bieber getting done, Dylan Cease getting done. I've done this like 3 times today. Dylan Cease getting done before December, before the winter meetings at over $200 million. This to me kind of confirms what has been building for the last couple of years. And like to your Boris point, is something that he's been saying all along, which is like the Jays should be a top spender. The Jays have the whole country. The Jays should be just there with the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers. And lo and behold, they finally are.
Well, and they've always spent, like in the last 5-6 years, they've always spent. But the way they've spent has been, all right, we're going to be patient. We're going to be disciplined. And we're going to wait maybe, in the estimation of some fans, like painfully long. And then in January, we go sign Santander. And that's viable. Obviously, it got them to the World Series. So it's not like that's a horrible approach. But this is very different. And I think that as long as we're talking about Scott Boras here, this is a very experienced agent. He loves setting records. He loves getting big deals for his clients. Dylan Cease was one of his prize free agents. There was no way that he was going to sign Dylan Cease with a team unless in November, unless he was getting exactly what he wanted, maybe even more than what he wanted. So here the Jays are, they offer 210. Scott Boras is like, all right, don't think we're beating that. Let's go. Yeah. So, that's where it's like, and I don't think this is like a fundamental shift from, of course it would be entertaining as hell if Ross Atkins now was just like, all right, I don't care. Like I'm not being measured anymore. Exactly. But it's not going to happen. Ross Atkins, we have a decade of data that says that he is still a measured, disciplined decision maker when it comes to these things. But clearly they like Dylan Cease enough to the point that they can commit $210 million to him in November and still feel like, hey, that's a good enough value. That's a good enough deal that we can still do the other things we need to do to help this team.
So for me, this comes down to, I don't need you to fundamentally change who you are as a general or as a front office, except for this one thing, which is if you love a player, which they clearly love Dylan Cease, they viewed him as the top of the market. That's clear, right? Like you're not doing this deal unless he's your number one choice. This wasn't like they went to Framber Valdez and he said, no, I'm going to wait. And they were like, well, I guess we're going to back pivot to Dylan Cease. Like, no, this was their guy. If you love a guy, jump the market for the guy, make it happen for the guy. If you like a guy, treat it the way that you have all along, which is, wait to see how the market bears out and know that they will come back to you and that you will still get an opportunity to make that decision in the 11th hour. But I do think that this one is a pretty fundamental shift, like maybe not in terms of who they are as front office, but just sort of what the Blue Jays now represent from an ownership and a spending structure. Yes, they always spend money, but they don't normally get deals done of this. Well, they've never had a pitcher that they've signed to this kind of money, and I don't recall them ever doing this in November. So I would be fairly encouraged. So the fallout from this, I kind of want to go over with you, which is like, you know what? Maybe what are your thoughts on Cease like in at this number? Because then I'll get to the fallout.
Yeah, as far as him, the pitcher, and what this value looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a lot of money.
for
It's a
sure.
lot of money, and I am not going to sit here and say after a World Series appearance that the Blue Jays should be pinching pennies or trying to outmaneuver and outsmart anyone. Sometimes you just go and you pay full retail for the luxury goods, and that's it. The other teams can do the thrift shopping, and that's okay. And the Blue Jays might have a time in the offseason where they're looking for bargains too. This is not a bargain. They are paying full price for Dylan Cease, and that's great. I mean, he's a really, really good pitcher. He's 29 years old. He throws 97. He has a 3.88 lifetime ERA. Each of the last 5 years, he has been worth somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. He's a really, really good pitcher. And consider, too, the fact that his defense, 2 of the last 3 seasons, has really let him down. High batting average on balls in play. Now, you take that, copy and paste that into Toronto, much better defense. All of a sudden, you have some shorter innings. You have fewer runs on the board. That ERA starts to look a lot different. So projecting him forward, which is the only thing that matters, you would project a high strikeout, high durability pitcher who can start playoff games for you, and probably 29 now, probably 4 really good years, I think is a safe expectation. The last couple of years of this thing, I mean, we're seeing with Jose Barrios right now, sometimes those long-term
It's a wild
deals,
card.
you really don't know what you're going to get. And maybe it'll be productive. Maybe it'll be like the Max Scherzer deal with the Nationals, and the Jays will just be, thrilled with this thing from start to finish. But really, if you get 4 really good years out of him, including some playoff starts, which he's fully capable of doing, then you're talking about a pretty fair contract.
So I definitely hear that. What I would say, though, is if you're banking this many years on a guy, right? If you're giving him a 7-year contract, some of the stuff that I would want to look for is, okay, durability. He has been that, right? He gives you 32 starts a year the last 5 seasons. What I would also point to is that, and I mentioned this with Ennis already, but there's only 4 other active starters right now who have had 5 straight years with 200 plus Ks. And they are Chris Sale, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, and Justin Verlander, all guys that have pitched well into their late 30s, which is not where this contract would take you. And then lastly, in terms of the longevity of the deal, just when we're talking about this, you mentioned that he throws 97. What you didn't mention is that this was actually the year where his fastball average sat the highest, and he's 29 years old. And so if you're looking at 3 markers of encouraging ways to not just project like the defense stuff that you mentioned, like getting the ERA down, limiting the walks to a certain degree, I think is going to be very important. The potential of adding a third pitch with this pitching staff, I think, is going to be a question mark for this guy. But he's got 3 unbelievably encouraging markers for predicting what I would say is future success.
Yeah. And look, like the easiest year out of all these seasons to predict, of course, is 2026. And it's just really hard for me to imagine that in 2026 he isn't a very good pitcher, especially if you put a better defense behind him. You have great strikeout ability, so much experience to draw on. He's going to be on a winning team, a good environment. I think that in 2026, you start to look at this rotation with Gausman and Yasavage and Bieber, and Barrios is that number 5 now. Some questions there, but this is a very, very good rotation. And between Bieber and adding Dylan Cease, the Jays have probably had the most productive offseason of any major league team so far, which the goal is never to it's not a race, and it's not even you can't just win the offseason. The Blue Jays know that better than most, but I'm sure for Jays fans, it's kind of fun to be, winning the offseason and to be the team that has added the most talent so far of any team in Major League Baseball.
Listen, man, again, you're right. You win the offseason, great. That's not the point of Major League Baseball. But this is a fan base that got kicked in the teeth, square in the mouth. Like you were on your knees and you got kicked through the back of your head with that World Series loss. And I said this from the outset. The only way for fans to be able to move on and to start to feel optimistic was if they started to splash some cash around and then reinvigorate this fan base with some new, exciting names. And Bieber opting in was one thing because it was proof of, hey, being here matters. And then the second one now has been going out and getting a marquee free agent, jumping the market for him, overpaying to a slight degree, in my opinion. But even still, you look at the deferrals, $26 million a year for one of the marquee free agent pitchers, and the guy that you want more than anyone. I don't think that anybody's going to really shake their head at that and say, wow, I can't believe you did that, especially given all the factors that you just talked about here. But the question now becomes with this guy, one other thing I'll actually say. Do you think the market mattered in this signing? Because obviously, like winning, we would say like, yeah, a guy's more likely to take the big contract from the Blue Jays rather than take the big contract from the Pirates. But there is something to be said about like the Robbie Ray comparison where he walked a ton of guys and had the stuff. And if you look at this guy, if you're trying to limit the walks and you want to look at profiles of pitchers that can help you get the most out of yourself, I would think that the Blue Jays staff would have a bit of a reputation now, but also they're stable of arms that you can work with and that you can consult with and that you can compete with would have to be something here too.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just they were in the World Series.
Yeah.
I think that's it. And I think, in talking to the Blue Jays about how they were trying to recruit the last off season, 24-25, after an 88 loss season, clearly, as much as they had the full conviction that they were on the way up and that better things were ahead, it's a little harder to do that after an 88 loss season. Everyone knows like your team kind of sucked. Whereas this year, everyone knows. They don't even have to say it. Everyone knows they were in the World Series against the Dodgers. Like it's just a fact. And so, I think that does a lot of the recruiting for them and puts them in a great position beyond Cease to continue. But just as far as the market on this, one thing that just occurred to me as you were speaking there is, by January, there will be deals, right? There will be bargains on other free agent starting pitchers. And I don't know who it'll be, but maybe like Ranger Suarez signs for 92 over 4. You know what I mean? And people are like, wow, that's like less than half of Dylan Cease. And Ranger Suarez is a good pitcher too. And, there are going to be bargains out there, especially with the possibility of, a lockout potentially less than 12 months away. Some teams are going to be kind of cautious when it comes to their spending. And there are flaws on some of these free agent starting pitchers. But end of the day, it's telling that the Blue Jays don't feel that they have to be bargain shoppers. And this goes back to George Springer. It goes back a long time now. But they have spent very aggressively. And that should mean that the Dylan Cease deal is not the end point of their offseason. They should have room to continue maneuvering and continue adding to this team.
Well, I like this because it's actually the way that I like to spend, which is everybody loves a bargain, right? Everybody waits out deals. Everybody tries to see if you can get a good price on something. But every once in a while, when you're doing your shopping, you look at the bargains and you look at the potential bargains and you go, like, I really like that. That's really good. But ultimately, what I want is this thing. And so for me, like, that's furniture and that's clothes. And oftentimes it's like you can get a piece of furniture that's nice or that is the knockoff of something, right? And kind of looks like the thing that you want it to be. And you will pay a much better price on it. But you know what you usually feel really good about and don't regret spending money on is the thing you wanted in the first place. The thing that caught your eye and that you said, this is going to fit into my living room perfectly. I'm going to feel proud when people come over and they see this. Yeah, it's an expensive coffee table. Yes, did I spend too much money on it? Absolutely. No, do I want to tell people what I spent on it? But I love it. And that's the way I feel the Blue Jays went out about Dylan Cease, is that they said, you know what, this is what we love. This is what we want. We're going to pay more than maybe what we could get for the knockoff, but we got the main thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a great way to put it. They got what they wanted here. And some years, some players, like say with the relief market, maybe with the relief market this year, I know there was like some Edwin Diaz noise out there, not expecting that necessarily to be the path the Blue Jays go down. I think they're in a position where, okay, they check on Raisel Iglesias. They check on Phil Maton. They're involved, but they're not desperate. And so with the relief market, maybe you do the bargain shopping because there's just so many names and, relievers are kind of unpredictable. You don't have to jump that market every year. But then in some cases, hey, if you really believe Dylan Cease is the guy and he throws 97 and he's been very consistently good already with some further upside, then maybe that's the case. So By the way, didn't realize you were a furniture guy. So we'll have to. I wouldn't say I am, but this is new information for me about JD Bunkis.
Listen,
So this is already a win for me to learn that.
I
about
love
you.
a good piece of furniture. I don't think that it's smart business going out and getting something cheap that you're going to have to just replace in a couple of years. That is basically a seasonal item that if you ever have to move, isn't going to make the move. All right, like
Great take.
that was my college
Great
job.
take.
I was a mover, and you moved a lot of furniture, and you go, this is a cheap piece of crap, and this is not going to survive the move. Versus, ooh, this is a really nice piece that you're going to have for the entirety of your life. You got to look at it that way too. Like that's what I'm saying about the 7 years. Is like, all right, Framber Valdez, for example, is a little bit older. And could he end up being the better pitcher of these two guys? Like, yeah, that's absolutely on the table. Of course it is. No one in their right mind would say that it is a lock it down certainty that Dylan Cease ends up being the best pitcher from this class. But you did get a guy that I think part of this, anyway, the way that I'm reading it is not only is he the guy that you love for the now, but a big piece of it is that you have two pitchers coming off the books this following offseason. You need to have a little bit of cost certainty. And if you're banking on what is your future going to look like as well, because you don't want to just be competitive in the 1 year, you want to be competitive over the next 5 years, that this was your ultimately best bet. And that's why I view it like the furniture is like what's going to last.
Yeah, they need someone who can be there because some of these pitchers are either in decline, like Barrios appears to be, or they're on the end of their deals. Gosman, 1 year away. Bassett and Scherzer already gone. So they do need and Bieber, of course, on a 1 year deal. So they need to have some stability. Otherwise, what you go into next offseason, you're looking for like 3 starting pitchers. Add Cease now. That helps you as far as your overall direction. And unlike someone like Tatsuya Imai, who has tons of upside and is coming over from Japan this year, Cease has already experienced ups and downs in the major leagues. So you just have, again, I love the upside of Imai, and I believe he's going to be good. And he might be good for the Yankees, but I'm not sure he's going to be good in the first half of 2026. You know what I mean? So Cease is someone you slot in, you are good to go. And I think given the Jays' aspirations for 2026, there's some value in that.
Well, look at what happened with Roki Sasaki this year.
Exactly.
It's a big adjustment. He cried on the mound after he got shelled his first outing.
Yep.
Like, I'm not saying Ime is that same guy, but yeah, there's far more potential for you to take time to acclimate than it does for a starting pitcher who's already thrown in a major market on a team that had World Series aspirations and is now coming to Toronto knowing, again, about the facilities, about your organization, about where you are in your competitive cycle, and embracing all of those things. Okay, so fallout from this, I think, is important because we've kind of touched on the idea that at least a piece of this signing in terms of them getting this aggressive for this guy has to do with them missing starting pitching depth the following year. And they prioritized pitching. They went out and they said, this is our number one identifying piece. So they did jump the market in order to do so. But you and I have talked about, hey, does a big free agent signing at starting pitcher preclude them from bringing back one of Max Scherzer or Chris Bassett? And our thought at the time was, no, I don't think that it should because they want to make sure that they have depth. But then when you pay a guy $210 million, it does shape the way that you're looking at the money that you're going to sink into your starters. Do you think that this is now over in terms of the thought of bringing back Bassett or Scherzer short of like, yeah, their market's completely bottoming out?
I don't think it's over. Like, if you're the Blue Jays right now, I definitely don't think you call up Chris Bassett's agent and say, thanks, like, it's been great, good luck. Like, I think you keep that door open for a couple of reasons. One, as you said, there could come a point in the new year where, hey, these guys are looking for a place to land. They love Toronto. They love the fit. And the Jays have a little money and it just kind of works, especially if there were to be an injury, then you start to have a real need. These things happen. So that's where I would keep that door propped open. And then added to that, Jose Barrios, he's under contract, obviously, for 2026 and beyond. Would definitely not expect him to opt out at this point. And it wasn't a great finish to the season. Obviously, he lost his rotation spot to Trey Savage and a frustrating finish for him. There's been a little bit of speculation that I've heard that the Blue Jays would at least listen on some sort of swap involving Jose Barrios. So if that were to come to fruition, which is probably a low probability chance, but if that were to come to fruition, all of a sudden you need one more arm. So again, I would keep those doors open just because you never know.
I'm quadrupling down on this take. The smartest thing the Blue Jays can do, and I don't care if it totally backfires in my face, fine. Like, I have many takes that backfire in my face. Eat some money and get off Jose Barrios and bring back Bassett and Scherzer. Sign both those guys and have some depth. To me, it's time to move on. And, yeah, you know what? Maybe he has a bounce-back season. But what you're losing from your clubhouse by removing those two guys still frightens me. And yeah, I think that, like you said, there's still a possibility where you could bring one of those two guys back, but it really does simplify things if you're able to move off of Barrios and turn him into, yep, you ate some money, but you also have these two guys back who I think both would love to be back. So it's just the way that I hope it is. And when you say that they're listening, I wonder if quietly they're the ones that started those conversations going like, hey, would you listen to us about moving this guy?
I guess, like, when I think about this, like, and I'm kind of picturing who's going to be the most productive of those three pitchers in 2026.
Barrios probably actually has the highest chance.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like, and this is where, of course, like, there's the recency bias of him being left off the roster and a really frustrating finish. But I don't know, like, he's not that old. If he, and I know the velo was down, but if he's a good worker and he's someone who has rebounded before from real struggles. He's a great athlete. He's really motivated, takes great care of himself. You put all those things together in front of a good defense, the durability, the age. I'm like, it's not hard to imagine a 2-WAR season from him at all.
I'm not like removing the case at all. Like, I'm not saying that I think that there's a 0% chance that he's an effective pitcher. Like, again, he was your opening day starter this year.
Yeah.
And he has been consistently solid. And if you're telling me that Jose Barrios is your number 5 starter, my God, what an envious position to be in. But given just, to me, and I get it, I overdo this stuff, and that's why I would make a really piss-poor executive, is I lean too far into the human element of this stuff. But I just think that there is when I spoke to every single person, including yourself, about this baseball team, and like even speaking to Shai a few weeks ago, he described Chris Bassett as the guts of this team. That removing both of those guys from your personality makeup and from your urgency makeup, which those two guys both have in their career, their willingness to do whatever it takes to win. Let's just from a even practical standpoint, you having Dylan Cease, who's being brought in and potentially wants to add a splitter or a third pitch to his arsenal. The value of Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett being on your roster as guys that you can consult with as, frankly, player coaches, but also just dudes that can handle an MLB clubhouse from a personality standpoint. I am a little concerned that they're going to lose a bit of that. I'm not trying to do like negative Nancy stuff today. Like, this is a real day to celebrate the Toronto Blue Jays and what they've accomplished in free agency so far. But yeah, I'm a believer in what those guys bring, and I've heard it from enough people now, whether it's been their former teammates or their current teammates, in terms of their values, that I think there's something to it.
There is. Those guys bring a lot. There's no question about it. I think what's good, or what leaves the Blue Jays in a strong position, is that Bassett and Scherzer are not alone in that. And I would agree. I think Chris Bassett is part of the guts of this team. And Max Scherzer was a huge part of them getting to where they got to. Obviously, he was pitched Game 7 of the World Series. Like, he was a huge part of it. But there's also Ernie Clement and David Schneider and Miles Straw and Kevin Gausman and Eric Lauer and Alejandro Kirk and George Springer, and all these guys in their own way create an environment that's really positive, that, the players trust each other and the coaching staff trusts the players, and the vibe is good and they joke around. It was a special group. I mean, there's no question that in my time covering baseball, it's the closest group. It's like the best chemistry I've ever seen. And well, Bassett was a big part of that. It's not like you take him out and the whole thing disappears.
I'm not making that case at all. All I would say to it is, it's just like a group dynamic amongst your friends. Is you have the guys who are the vibes coordinator, right? And that seems to be Ernie Clement. You've got dudes who everybody gets along with, like Vladdy, right? Like, we see clips of him blowing in George Springer's ear in the postseason, like keeping things loose kind of guys. And it's still good, though, on a team to have some old psychos, Some old
Oh,
psychos who are hyper
yeah.
intense about everything and who don't let things get too lackadaisical. And when you're mentioning all those guys, I'm thinking a lot of similar personality types in terms of like fun, silly, keep it light, goofy, friendly, get along with everybody. I'm sure most guys on the team want to sit next to Ernie Clement on the plane for trips, but I need a couple like dogs, like some mean old dogs that'll bite you if, the thing ends up on the wrong day. And Scherzer and Bassett represent that quotient to that clubhouse dynamic that I don't think that they replicate with other guys.
Well, and it's hard to find. Like
Yeah.
there are just not like Max Scherzer when it comes to, to use your phrase, the old psychos.
Yeah.
Like Max Scherzer's one of one.
He's the oldest
He's
psycho
older
there
than
is.
anyone, and he's more psychotic than
Yeah,
anyone.
exactly.
And I mean that in the
Yes.
best way
This is
possible, to be
glowing.
really clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of one in that department. Now he's going to have other opportunities. I think clearly he's going to be open to a return with the Blue Jays, but we know about the connections in San Francisco. He's a good pitcher if he wants, and he does want to pitch. So he's going to have other opportunities. You don't know how it's going to line up, but yeah, I mean, look, it was so cool watching Scherzer. I could see a fit potentially, but there, at this point, the Jays can sit back a little bit. Having added Cease and Bieber, it's like, okay, they added a number 1 starter and a number 2 starter. Like they can, if they want to, sit back a little bit now and let the offseason come to them.
And I will say this, I'm not going to pout if they don't end up with either of those guys. Like, again, if Eric Lauer ends up being their 6th starter and they have Jose Barrios in the 5 hole, I'm going to feel pretty damn good about where the Blue Jays are at from a starting pitching standpoint. Like, there is a great comfort that this team has now being able to project forward to the rest of free agency and say, okay, now we have our budget. Now we know what this looks like from a financial standpoint. And when we're attacking our other guys, whether it's bargains that we fit our group or the dudes that we're going to be a little bit more aggressive on, we've at least got one part of our team that is completely shored up, and that is starting pitching, and anything else would be a bonus that, if it falls into our laps, we can accomplish.
And I actually like the idea of adding one more starting pitcher.
So do I.
I'm with you on that. And as far as like, I agree. They're good now. If they don't do anything else, you can still be in a good position. But I still like the idea. Like you look at, Cody Ponce coming over from Korea, like maybe sign him, maybe just do a 2-year deal there and see what happens. And if you have a stacked, healthy rotation in spring training, well, you're going to have to put someone in the bullpen and figure things out. But, we all know how rare that is. And we all know, like, I actually meant to write this, kind of forgot, but you think about the Blue Jays rotation 4 months ago, okay? Like mid-July. It was totally, they've transformed their rotation in a 4-month period where Trey Savage, Shane Bieber, and Dylan Cease were nowhere to be seen in the Blue Jays rotation as of like July. Now they have Bieber, Savage, and Dylan Cease in rotation. It's been transformed. It's been upgraded. That is a big shift when it comes to projecting this team. And, to the, like to the Blue Jays doubters out there who at the beginning of the season were maybe pointing to run differential and they're not that good. Well, there's been a meaningful change as far as how good that rotation is. And it's in a positive direction.
Last year during spring training, one of the segments I did with Arden that stuck out was, what do they call it? Is Steamer is the one that's the projection?
Yep.
So they had the Blue Jays, I think, as the 24th rotation going into the season. And that was after the Scherzer signing. And my guess is this year that will not be the case. They're not going to be in the bottom 10 teams in terms of starting pitching projection all of baseball because of the 3 guys that you mentioned and how drastically they change things. I'm with you.
10.
I would never advocate for a 6-man starting rotation. I think that's like nonsensical. And you also saw it backfire on the Blue Jays this year. And I think it was actually one of the mistakes that they made in terms of the way that they limped towards the AL East crown. But I do like the idea of every once in a while you've got another guy that can give you a start because you want to bump Trey Savage back a day to limit the innings. Hey, you want to bump Shane Bieber back a day because you're not exactly sure of his long-term health, right? Like, that to me is an advantage that you can explore. And for me, that's not someone else other than Chris Bassett. That is like your dream scenario right now, or not mine. My personal dream scenario is that Bassett would be open to a creative role like that, where he's like, I'm going to get some starts throughout the course of the season. Injuries also do happen, so you could very much end up in this rotation. But also, you're a swingman who continues to explore who you are in the bullpen, who's a multiple innings eater, but also can jump in and give you a spot start whenever you kind of need those days.
And the tough part about that is Bassett pitched so well that, he might have
got a market.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you look at all right, like, do you want to spend, I don't know, 150 million on Imai, or do you want to spend 175 on Framber Valdez, or you spend 32 on Chris Bassett for a couple years,
Totally.
and he really helps you clubhouse wise and on the field? That might appeal to a lot of teams, because some teams don't want to enter the sweepstakes of the big market deals, but they've got 30 million, they got 40 million to throw around.
Yep.
So that's where Bassett will be in demand. It's a price point that everyone can afford, and he's good. So then does he not price himself out, but kind of opportunity himself out of the Blue Jays picture? I don't know. It's just a question I wonder about.
Well, and not only that, but like right now is the time of year where we hyperfixate on these teams where we go like, who are the big spenders, right? Like they're the competitors. So it's like the Blue Jays could win a World Series, the Dodgers could win a World Series, the Yankees are in the mix, the Mets are in the mix. But the actual greater landscape of baseball is that there are multiple teams that do feel as though they've got a shot at a World Series this year. And if anything the Blue Jays did is they would probably open the door for a lot of teams that were going and looking at this thing and saying, hey, you know what? We might have thought we were taking a step back, but maybe what we should be doing is taking a step forward. And so, yeah, I think it's just it's a pipe dream for me right now. It's just one that I hope that, as you said, that they don't close the door to. Last thing for me is, all right, where are we at with the bats, though, now? Because to me, this actually makes it more urgent that you land one of those two big fish in Bo Bichette and Kyle Tucker, because you would just look at the roster and say, holy crap, this is now, like, if you look at the rotation and you look at the batting order, if you keep one of those two guys or add one of those two guys, it's just, it gets to the point of being undeniable. And now they get to focus on that. But how are you anticipating those markets developing as we're like now, 2 weeks from winter meetings?
Yeah, 10 days next weekend. So I think that's the key question here. I'll hopefully have more concrete information on this with each passing day. From what I'll give you right now is a little bit of speculation, but it's informed speculation. I think given that the Blue Jays' number one need and their number one priority was starting pitching, that was the one area that I felt they were most likely to extend themselves and to go beyond, a projected contract, maybe even beyond, their own internal valuation. They may have done that with Cease. They certainly spent a lot on Dylan Cease. Having done that and having achieved that number one goal, I would expect, based on the conversations that I've had and watching this team very, very closely over the years, I would expect that now it's a little bit more of course, they're still going to be interested in Kyle Tucker. Of course, they're still interested in Bo Bichette. Who wouldn't be? And Bo Bichette presumably is even more interested in coming back to the Blue Jays because they look like as appealing a destination as they've ever looked in our lifetimes, essentially. So they're going to be engaged. They're not going to hang up those phones. They're going to continue those conversations, but I would expect that they do it from a place of, okay, here's our term. Here's where we see, that we'd be comfortable going to. And maybe there's a little room for flexibility and negotiation beyond that. But I don't really expect the Blue Jays to spend $400 million on Kyle Tucker. And I might be wrong. And if I'm wrong about that, we'll have lots to talk about and I'll be happy to come on and discuss it with you. But I don't really expect that. But that being said, he might not get that money. So if things shift and if there's, the Dodgers go for Bellinger and the Yankees decide they're good with Grisham and the Phillies bring back Schwarber and all of a sudden Kyle Tucker needs a place to go, I think the Jays clearly could be in on that and would be in on that. But I don't think they're going to be in a bidding war where it's like 410, 420, 430, 440. So
he's a guy they like. He's not a guy they love. Like it's the furniture analogy.
Right. And they really like him, but he's expensive. And so I think the same applies to Bo to an extent where, of course, they like Bo Bichette. They recognize the importance of Bo Bichette, but I don't know that it becomes we go at all costs, we go at full speed, and like he's locked up in a week's time.
Can I raise one Kyle Tucker conversation with you that I don't think anybody's been having and that I think is salient when we're talking about this? So we just did this whole bit about, I did, on, hey, the value of bringing back Chris Bassett, and do you move off of Jose Barrios to make the fit more comfortable? The only part of the Kyle Tucker conversation that feels absent to me is he's an outfielder. And if you're going to be spending a lot of money on an outfielder, and granted, he's a good fit, like when you look at what they need, right, and what they covet and his track record and all this different stuff, like it makes sense. But this team has Dalton Varsho playing center for sure. They just paid Anthony Santander a big old bucket of money, and they need to see some return on that contract. And as of next season, anyways, he's blocked to be playing the DH because George Springer is going to have that job, and barring an injury.
Yep.
You had a season from Addison Barger where it seemed, I would say, clear-ish to me that, yeah, he can play third base, but where you really like him is that outfield spot. Nathan Lucas projected better than anybody anticipated. And again, you can factor in negative regression and like, if you do replace one of those guys with Kyle Tucker, no one's crying. But yeah, Davis Schneider was a piece for this team. Miles Straw had some impact for this team. Like if you're putting Kyle Tucker in there, he's not a bench piece. Like he's an everyday player. And all of a sudden that makes it where there's only one spot in your outfield for another semi-regular or even like that matchup outfielder. It kind of feels to me as though that signing would have to create a domino effect where somebody is on the way out via trade.
Yeah. And this is a speculation again.
Yeah.
But
Lucas.
I think in this scenario, yeah, exactly. I think in the scenario that they sign Kyle Tucker, they're trading Nathan Lucas. Or you go into spring training, you let it play out, and then, you kind of make an uncomfortable decision at the end of spring, or someone's injured. Because there are a lot of injuries that pop up, of course. But
I love how we
think
do that where we're like almost optimistic about the injury, right? Like to get more guys. We're like, and then maybe
it happens.
Yeah, I know.
Same with pitching.
Yeah,
Same with pitching.
I know.
Someone's going to be hurt. As you never like to go there, but it happens. So yeah, if they were to sign Tucker, it's Tucker, Varsho, and Santander in the outfield. It's Barger at third. It's Clement at second. It's Jimenez at short. Bo is not probably coming back in that situation. And so, yeah, Lucas is either on the bench or he's traded to the Pirates for a reliever. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of or a minor league pitching prospect. Like you kind of do it that way. So again, I'm not holding my breath. Dylan Cease is the second biggest contract in Blue Jays history. Are they going to sign, 3 $200 million contracts in a 12-month span between Vladdy and Cease and then another one? I don't know. Certainly, if it's ever going to be a time, it's probably after the first World Series run in 30 years. And it's I don't think it's off the table. But I think that the Blue Jays now are probably going to be approaching the rest of their offseason from a more measured space. And the other teams are now trying to catch them.
What I hate is that you've been so right. Because I feel far more urgency for this baseball team now to go out and add one of those two guys. Like you mentioned the World Series piece of this and just like the win now. And I get it. Like the idea that you would be spending multiple $200+ million contracts in one calendar year is unbelievably difficult to project. And I think that you're right to and again, you're doing this on information. This isn't your opinion. This is something that you're looking at and sourcing. But I think it would be I don't want to say I don't want to overdo this, but I think it would be a pretty big miss if they don't end up with at least Bo back and that they tried to piece together the rest of the offseason with other guys that they view within the valuations. And then if it ends up backfiring, everyone points to that and goes like, how could you not bring back like a true star that fits into your lineup? Especially, again, like Santander doesn't work out. George Springer ages. There's a pathway for me to see where the lineup does not look nearly as dangerous and as deep. And you really remove one of those variables if you bring in one of those two guys.
Right. Because if you do rely on Nathan Lucas to repeat what happened and on Davis Schneider and on Barger and on Clement and and Springer, there is, there's
danger, there's risk.
Yeah, there is. And look, we expect Vladdy in the regular season to be better than what he was. And this should still be a solid offensive team, but yeah, you want to add to it. You do want to add to it. No question about that. But pitching was always the priority, as I understood it. And I believe, I'll say this, the Jays are going to add another pitcher. That's not a hot take. They will add more pitching, okay? That's going to happen this offseason. Will they add a bat? Will they add a big bat? I don't know. I don't know. It might happen. It might not happen. I don't know.
Ben Nicholson Smith, again, senior reporter for Sportsnet. I'll be talking to you during the winter meetings, buddy. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, JD. Anytime.
Yeah, Ben Nicholson Smith, one of the best. And again, nailed it. All right. Quick break. We'll come back and hit what we missed. I went long with BNS, so my little divas stayed upstairs. None of them came down. Armin Brandon from upstairs in the studio, not on camera. What did we miss?
Well, this is a story that's kind of been
Well, yeah,
around, but we
okay.
haven't really gotten to it. Was Connor Bedard had some, let's say, fans running up to him looking for some autographs, and
Okay,
he
yeah.
kind of obliged after a few different asks. Wanted to get your thoughts on crazy memorabilia guys who chase after athletes.
So if you didn't see this, it was like from earlier in the week.
I think it was from
Bedard,
Sunday.
yeah, he's hounded by adult autograph seekers who are filming him, by the way, which adds to. I'm sure the filmers are doing it because they want to have proof that it's him that signed it. That's the only reason that I could come up with why you would approach someone in public, be chasing them down and berating them, and also have a camera in their face, which, like, if you want to talk about the worst ways to possibly approach someone, that's it. Stranger asking them for something during a walk with friends as they're trying to go to work, and you're putting a camera in their face. Completely nonsensical behavior.
Yeah.
And Bedard, when you say he obliges, like, sure, he scribbled on the page. I don't know if those were autographs. And I guess based on them having video of it, like, you can kind of, I would kind of bet that weirdly, the price of those things goes up because they're like a notorious. It's now a known video, right? Like, you own. Oh, this is the magazine that Connor Bedard scribbled all over because he was pissed off. I want to zag on this because everyone's take should probably be the same on this particular issue, which is it's so cringy. Some people are just trying to make a living, and I get that. There's a market for autographs. There's a market for signed cards and signed magazines. And yeah, so somebody's kind of got to do it, I guess. And these guys are out there hustling, and they're in the cold, and they endure the embarrassment. So part of me actually does empathize with them a little, right? But I guess where I land on it is, even if you are doing that job, and even if it is an embarrassing job, the idea that you're filming it and posting it to me is completely unnecessary. And also, I think that the only reason it gets posted is obviously because this guy felt like Bedard was being a jerk, which is nuts. So, like, this guy actually did something for you, and then your first thought was to post it as proof that he was difficult to deal with, when in actuality, you were difficult to deal with. If somebody says no in that situation, your thought should be, okay, man, maybe I'll catch you next time. Maybe you catch him in a different mood. Maybe you catch him in a different day. But to be following him, like walking lockstep with him and his group, him saying, I don't think you know what no means, and then continuing to be persistent, that's where I lose any empathy or relatability to the autograph seeker. That's where I look at him and go, you suck, man. You genuinely suck. And if I was another player, and I'm guessing that they will recognize this guy because he's probably goes around and does this with everyone, that yeah, he's not getting anything, and I don't think that he should. Anyway, before we go, who wants to win a bunch of cash while doing the best thing this holiday season? Sportsnet 590 The Fan is all in supporting the 50-50 fortune for sick kids. It's a 50-50, so the more money we raise, the more kids we can help, and the more holiday cash you can win. The current take-home prize is now guaranteed to be over $140,000. It's pretty good. Buy your tickets at 5050fortune.ca or text the code word MONEY to 590-590 right now, and we'll send the link right to your phone. 18 plus, please play responsibly. Standard message and data rates apply. Lottery license RAF 1518410. See you tomorrow.